Welcome and thanks for joining us on episode number 276 of the Financially Independent Teachers Podcast. If you think your story could help other educators and you'd be willing to come on the show, please check out our webpage at financiallyindependentteachers.com and fill out the form to come on the show. Man, if you hear a really loud noise in the background, I apologize. We're getting a new toilet installed upstairs as we speak. Those are the lovely things of home ownership, right? Our other one was leaking. So if you hear some noise, that's what's going on there. And I apologize. But it was so fun to open up my email and get the form filled out from a previous guest. And when I say previous guest, it was episode 32. We've got Eric Krieger. He was with us a long, long time ago. And I can't wait to get an update with you, Eric, on your life and what's going on.
Well, I'm happy to be back, Dave. I love the podcast. Enjoy listening to you and to all of your wonderful guests talk about their stories. So happy to be back and share what I can about what my wife and I are doing.
All right, well, let's get into it with the audience really quick on your role in education and what you did and your career and what it looked like before you got to retirement.
So I was a teacher in the Dallas area, North Texas region, for years. Did a little bit of work as an assistant principal, and then closed out my career as a college professor, a lecturer. Retired by the age of 50, which was my goal. And I think when I was on the podcast last, we went through how I had gotten there, and that was right about the time that I was quitting my last W-2 job. Sorry, Dave, I
You
lost
retired.
your audio.
Gotcha. I'm trying to mute here between the mess up there. I can edit this part out. So I've been trying to hit my little mute button. Can you hear me now?
You're back, yeah.
Okay, perfect. So I'll go ahead and edit that out. But it's amazing that you were able to retire at 50 years old. There's so many out there that say you can't do that. When did you strategically start thinking about, man, I think maybe I can make this thing happen at 50? And how did you handle that with the healthcare piece?
Well, we really actually started kind of late. My wife and I were both second marriages for both of us. So we came into it. I was about 30, and we came into it with some debt. So it was a 20-year process for us, but we took some detours along the way and tried other jobs, and got out of the classroom for a year or two, did tutoring, consulting, things like that. So we really could have moved through a lot faster, but it was about 16 to 18-year process in total. And it was a lot of fun to work through it all.
So before you did make that final decision to step away, did you and your wife have a number of, like, this is kind of our magic number of we need to make this much per month in retirement if we want to do this thing? And just to give me an update, did she retire when you did, or did she continue to work when you got out at 50?
So when we first started saving, it was really just the idea that we didn't want to be stuck. We saw, friends of ours that had been teaching for a long time, and the work just gets harder as you get older. Just it's physically demanding, it's emotionally demanding, and we wanted to have options. So we didn't have a set number at first, but as time went by, and as this kind of community expanded, and we got exposed to podcasts like yours and the Choose Five people, and we learned some of those principles about the rule, the 4% rule, and things like that, then it became a little bit easier for us to do our planning and make sure that we were comfortable walking away when we felt like it. I quit my W-2 job when I was 48, so 5 years ago now. My wife worked for a couple more years. She was a dean of students at the high school where our youngest son went, and she wanted to stick it out. I know you're thinking kind of same timelines with your daughter.
Yes.
She wanted to stick it out till he graduated, and she made it almost all the way. It gets really, really hard when you see that finish line and start, and you're running the numbers all the time. And you can leave. It makes it even harder to stay.
Ooh, well, thank you for I've thought about that. I'm like, man, I could technically go out in the middle of my daughter's senior year, around my birthday, around Christmas. Like, do I stick it out? Do I not stick it out? So that'll be an interesting thing to fight with when you know you can do it technically, and you can immediately collect that pension the next month. You're going to get the health care. But that's awesome that she was able to be at the school with her son.
Now, just to clarify, because I didn't answer the second half of your question, We're technically not retired from the state pension system. We haven't accumulated the years or the age that we need to do that. So we're retiring and living off of the nest egg from investments and getting our health insurance from the marketplace. So we'll be eligible for the state, teacher pension. I'll start being eligible in 4 years now, and at that point we'll have access to their insurance. Still not sure we're going to use it because I don't know, in North Carolina and in Texas, the legislature doesn't really take care of their teachers very well. So the insurance plan they have access to is not the best.
I'm curious, that you brought up a really good point because you hear teachers talk all the time of I can't get out of education because I won't be able to collect the pension until this age, or I can't get out of education. I even say this, and I've got to go to 50 because, as long as I make it to 50, then I'll have non-contributory health care, at least for myself. But technically, if I want to get out of teaching tomorrow, I could. It doesn't mean that you don't have healthcare. You just have to go to the exchange, and then you can still get healthcare through the Affordable Care Act. So I'm kind of curious, how many people in your household are on the insurance, and if you don't mind sharing with the audience how much you guys are paying on the exchange for your family of three, four, etc.
Yeah, it changes every year, and it's very, very specific to the locale that you're in. North Texas is a pretty expensive region for the marketplace plans. My youngest son is still on the plan with us, so it's a family of three, and our silver plan costs upwards of $2,200, $2,300 a month. We, because we're retired, have the ability to control our income, so we do qualify for some subsidies. This year is the first year where the subsidy cliff is back, so I'm going to have to manage my income very carefully this year to make sure that I don't make that $1 more that makes all of our subsidies go away. So that's actually one of my big challenges for this year.
Wow. So say that again. Your monthly healthcare bill, this is not including deductibles or anything. This is just to have the right for insurance to pay your monthly premium. It's how much?
It's about $2,200 without the
2200,
subsidy.
2200 without the subsidy. So with the subsidy, you what does it go down to?
Right now, we're paying about $700 a month based on the amount of income that we realized last year.
Gotcha. So that's another thing for, teachers to consider as well is you can control your income. You can control if you have investments, you control how much you pull out each year, and you strategically do that based on the tax brackets and all these different numbers, which can then give you some benefits. Now, obviously, you know, if you have to have a lower income to qualify for some of these things, you might not be able to do as much traveling or other things that you might want to do. So you just really want to measure twice and cut once before you do that. So pensions will be coming. It's just down the road.
Right. And there's a lot of numbers that go into this, and I know it's really deep into the weeds. We've written about it some because it does get complex. We're trying to manage the amount of our income for health care subsidies, for financial aid for our son, and for our taxes. So there's lots of moving parts, lots of variables, but it's not science. It's not rocket science. It's not magic. You can figure it out. It just takes a little bit of work.
What would you say your annual yearly spend is? What is that number that you guys try to stay under to reach some of these other benefits?
Yeah, we aim for $6,000 to $8,000 a month as our budget, and when we get to start talking about our lifestyle, you understand why there's a wide range in it. Depending upon where we are and what we're doing, we might bump that up a little bit, knowing that we can have some other months that are very low spend to bring the annual spend down.
So it's not like you're Mr. Money Mustache who's living off of 25 to $35,000 a year. You guys are still enjoying life.
Yeah, and even when we were being very careful with our pennies and trying to save 30 to 50% of our income in order to reach financial independence early enough to retire before 50, even when we were doing that, we had fun. We had a full life. We just made slightly different choices. We stayed in the starter home instead of upgrading. We drove vehicles into the ground. We did domestic driving vacations instead of, flying our kids everywhere. So it wasn't a life of deprivation. It was just a life of different choices.
Yeah, I think that's the American problem right there that you mentioned is we get push back all the time that, hey, you can't be in education, you can't build a good life and do all the things. Well, it's very difficult to have it all. If you have an $800 car payment and your spouse has a $400 car payment, and then instead of living in the 1,800 square foot home that you guys got married in with your child, you upgrade to the 2,800 square foot home. Sure, you might not be able to travel domestically or foreign, but if you can, choose to continue to drive the same car for an extra 3 to 5 years, if you can stay in the same house, even if you want to have a bunch of people over, maybe you rent a house on Airbnb for a weekend when you have holiday or family celebrations versus having an extra $1,500 a month in a house payment. You might be able to spend 3 grand for one weekend and you do it once a year. Then you had that big space to entertain. So there's ways to get creative. Now, when you got out at 50 from the W-2 job, do you recall what your net worth was? And where are we 5 years later from when you interviewed with us on episode 32?
We were at about $1.5 million back then. That was a number we felt really comfortable going into an extended period of drawdown, because we knew at that point it would be 7, 8 years before we were able to start the pension. And the pension will only be partial since we didn't work a full career. It won't be, like a full replacement for our salary. But the market has done very well. My wife continued to work for a couple of years. I've picked up a few consulting jobs that have allowed us to limit our drawdown. So we actually have more money now than we did when we started the process.
Gotcha. Is it safe to say that you've crossed over the $2 million mark?
I haven't checked recently. I try not to look at those things, but I think that's pretty safe.
Gotcha. That's great. All right. So you guys have an interesting lifestyle. I was just talking to a fellow teacher who's retired now, and she was talking about, I just can't sit still. Like when I'm in my 60s, I still want to be doing something. I can't imagine just sitting still, but she's not really into travel. She's not really into, domestic travel, international travel. Some people are homebodies, like my parents. They went on a cruise with us for spring break. It was their first time really out of the country besides going to Canada. And they live near Cleveland, Ohio. So Canada's like a 2.5 hour drive. So it's not like, that was a vast experience to go to Canada. But they're homebodies. They have enough money if they want to go out and if they want to travel the world, they could, but they don't. You and your wife have kind of a different view of retirement. And I don't know if I'm saying this right, but you guys call it being SLOMADs.
That's
Tell us
right.
what a SLOMAD is and what is your vision for this?
Well, when we were teachers, we took advantage of one of the benefits of that profession, and we traveled a lot during the summers. But we did it on the cheap. We did lots of road trips. Our goal was to get both of our boys to all 50 states before they were out of the house. So we started in Texas, and we do just loops around the country. We do, 3 weeks this direction, 3 weeks this direction, and we saw a lot. But we did it really quickly, and we were hitting, tourist hotspots and seeing lots of things, but on a very shallow level. As we have more time now, we've realized that we enjoy parts of travel, but we don't necessarily enjoy the rush. We also know that the place where we're living now is not necessarily our forever home. There are some things that we don't enjoy about it, starting with the Texas summers. So we're looking for a place where we might want to settle down for the long term. So we have some friends who have done like, oh, we're going to RV and we're going to travel that way. But you talked about your toilet install going on right now. I don't enjoy being a homeowner, and I wouldn't enjoy being a homeowner on wheels either. So our goal is to do what we call slowmatic travel, where we stay 3 to 6 months in a location, use that as a base to explore that area, looking for where we might stay long term at some point when we're ready to stop traveling so much.
So are you somebody that in this instance, would you stay at a hotel, like an extended stay? Would you do the Airbnb or have you looked into a place like Furnished Finder? What are some of the best options for the Krieger family with how you like to stay?
So typically what we'll do is we'll pick a general location, and it'll be an area that we want to explore more that we don't know as much about, that fits some of our geographic check boxes, some of the things that we look for, cost of living, climate. We want to have access to an airport. We like areas where there's a university close by because there's access to a lot of cultural events that way. We like water, whether it's, the ocean, rivers, lakes, things like that. So we'll find a general area, and then we'll find a place that we can stay for a medium-term rental. I know you guys do a lot of Airbnb. We've looked at that, but we haven't actually stayed at one for medium term. They tend to work better for us, at least for short-term rentals. So we've been using Furnished Finder a lot. It was originally designed for travel nurses and for college professors that had to be someplace for a semester. So we'll find a place that will stay, and then that will just become our new home for the months that we're staying in our new place.
I think we're on Furnished Finder as well. We have that detached garage that we have listed on Airbnb as a short-term rental, but we also have it on Furnished Finder. I've got a nurse coming in for 30 days, and then she'll leave, and then it'll be a month as a short-term rental till the next nurse comes for 92 days. She'll come in September and she'll move out around Christmas. And we're getting 1750 a month for a room above our garage, but it's a deal for them and it's a deal for us. Because where else are they going to find a place? Even if they got a hotel, now they've got a kitchen, they've got a yard, they've got all these different things. We've got a pool that they can use. I think Furnish Finder is kind of the new thing. And I've even read a bunch of articles, for people on the investing side, that this medium term rental, this SLOMADIC movement that your family's using is on the increase and on the climb, and a lot of people are doing it. Have you done some of your SLOMADIC traveling yet? What are some of the locations that you guys have gone to? And fill us in. Where did you stay? What did you like about each different spot?
So we've been at it for a year. Last fall, we were in Omaha, Nebraska. It was an area that we didn't know as much about, but it ticked a box for us. It was our attempt at living in urban living in a small, big city. Omaha is kind of in the middle of nowhere as far as it has more cultural stuff than you would expect because it's the biggest city within 6 hours or so. But because of its location, it's a lot cheaper than doing this in like Dallas, for example. So we were able to stay in a loft in the Old Market area, which is their like kind of trendy downtown area that has been rehabilitated. So we were right above the fun bars and restaurants and all those types of things. And it was a different kind of living. We could walk to stores, restaurants, parks, the river, bridges, etc., museums. Just a different kind of living than the suburban living that we've been doing for a long time. And of course, while we were there, we used that as a base to explore some Midwestern areas that we hadn't really looked at in depth before that.
Gotcha. So Omaha was the first one. How would you rate Omaha on a scale of 1 to 10?
We loved it. I'd say 7, 8. Now we were there from August until December, so we just caught the front end of winter. So we got some snow, some ice, but no blizzards. So I think most of the people that are there would say that we didn't really get the true Nebraska experience. Although we did go to a Cornhuskers football game and a couple of volleyball games and things like that. So that's practically a religion up there. So we
Yeah.
did try
Oh,
to live like a local when we're in those areas.
that's crazy. I've got a volleyball daughter, and that's the dream of every little volleyball player out there is playing at Nebraska. It was a couple years ago. They had the Nebraska women's volleyball team play in, I don't know, is it Memorial Stadium? I forget where the Huskers play. They played there and they sold out. It was like 85,000 people for a college volleyball game. And of course, Nebraska, some of the best college football fans that are out there, even if they haven't had the best seasons of late, they still, I think they're on like a consecutive, like maybe 20-year in a row sellout streak. So that would be a cool experience. I've heard there are great people there. Now, is it a place that you guys could see yourself potentially move? Is it still on the list?
It is still on the list. In fact, my wife is like, "Are you sure we can't just pick the first place?" I'm like, "No, no, no, no. That's not what we're doing. We're trying all these different places." But yeah, it's definitely a potential, landing place.
I've never been, so this is only from hearsay, but it sounds like you guys might want to make a trip to Des Moines, Iowa next.
It was on our list for a day trip from Omaha. Um, as part of our like that's our base, and then we're going different places, and we just didn't make it there. So
Gotcha. So when it comes to your Slomatic travel, you've done Omaha, Nebraska. What are the next maybe two or three stops that you guys have identified?
well, this last spring, that was the fall. In the spring, we moved down and we were in your neck of the country. We actually based ourselves in Myrtle Beach, and that was an experience in an experiment in learning to live like on the beach. We visited Hawaii quite a bit because I work there with some consulting gigs, but we probably can't afford to live in Hawaii full time. But we could live in South Carolina, North Carolina. So we actually had a condo that we could walk out right onto the beach, and that was wonderful. It was the off season. For the most part, we were there from January through April. So right as it started to get super busy, then that's about the time we were leaving. And again, we used that as a base. We took trips. We went up to Richmond for a conference. We drove up to the Outer Banks for a few days and then came back. Actually, came through Jacksonville. We didn't stop there. We stopped in New Bern and Wilmington. We went down to Charleston and Beaufort and Hilton Head, all those areas. So lots of good exploration of the region.
All right, so now I've got to ask you, this is a just a theme I've made up here. We're turning it into a game show. How do you rate coastal North Carolina and South Carolina?
I would say that Myrtle Beach itself, the city, is not a long-term fit because it's too touristy. But a lot of the places that we went would definitely be places we would explore. My wife loved New Bern, for example. We were only there for a day, and she wanted to stay. Um, so yeah, it's definitely a possibility.
Yeah. Now I will let you know that that I don't know the Texas heat. I've never been to Texas, but I know the Texas heat can be tough, but it's been 107 degrees with the heat index here for about the last 8 days. So summers in eastern North Carolina and South Carolina, it can be brutal with the humidity.
Yeah, I think at some of our later stops, we've got moving away from the coast, like up into the mountains. So we would be in the western part of North Carolina or the eastern part of Tennessee, and we drove out and had day trips through those areas, and those might be a better fit for us long term, at least in the summer months.
Yeah, I was going to tell you a good place you might want to look at is Greenville, South Carolina. That's an up and coming city. You're right on the edge of the mountains. I think you're only about an hour south of Asheville, where the Biltmore Mansion is there in North Carolina. And it's, I believe, directly between Atlanta and Charlotte. So you have within 2 hours, you have two really big cities there. So check out Greenville, South Carolina if you guys ever come back this way. Um, what's next on the list? So those are the
Next is
two
a
places
little bit
you've
of a
gone.
departure. Next is a little bit of departure. We came home for the summer because it's my youngest son's first summer home from college, and although he's been great at understanding that the family home is going away and that he'll be moving off, we didn't want him to have that experience this summer. So we kept the house. The older son is renting it from us and covering part of the property taxes and insurance for us. So we had a place to come back to. But in the fall, we're headed off to New Mexico. We're going to be in Santa Fe. That'll be our experience and our experiment in high desert. So edge of the mountains, drier certainly than the Carolinas, and cooler for even though it'll be we'll start there in August.
Gotcha. So, what is your budget for, when you're looking at Furnished Finder, is there a budget that you guys try to stick to? Is it, 2000 a month, 3000 a month?
So the thing that we think about on this is that when you think about your daily overhead, like what it costs just to be you and your family, some of the things are going to be the same no matter where you are. So we go to the grocery in Myrtle Beach and we spend about what we spend when we're in Dallas. When we are paying for our cell phones, when we're paying for health insurance, we're paying for all those things, and that those costs are all the same. So really, the big one is the housing. And what we've determined is that even though we have a paid off house here in Dallas, paying off that mortgage wasn't really the windfall that we expected it to be. You think, oh wow, we're gonna have all this extra money once we do that, and that didn't really last long. Your housing costs include a lot more than just your principal and interest payment. I know you know this. You have a wife who's a realtor, but a lot of people I think are surprised by the fact that your property taxes, your insurance, your utilities, your home maintenance, all those types of things are actually the biggest part of your home expense in the end. So, having said all that, what we do is we kind of try to offset the costs. Eventually, we'll be done with this house and we'll be able to stay in higher cost of living areas, and our housing budget will be able to rise a little bit. Right now, we're staying in relatively low cost of areas, living areas like Omaha, Myrtle Beach, New Mexico, and we budget between $1,500 and $2,000 a month for our Furnish Finder or Airbnb searches. Doesn't sound like a lot, but we don't need a lot. It's not an apples to apples comparison. We're not getting another four-bedroom house in the suburbs. We're looking for a one-bedroom apartment or condo, something that we can live comfortably in, and use as a base for just the two of us, not for a family of four.
Any advice for somebody out there who might be thinking about hopping on Furnished Finder? Does it cost any money as a guest to sign up for Furnished Finder?
No, most of the platforms out there, they don't make their money from you having a membership to the site or anything. So you can just, log in, create an account, gives you access to better tools. It will save your searches, things like that. But anyone can use it. You can just go on, check out an area, and see what appeals to you. There are some filters that we can use. So, sometimes we get too tight on the filters and we miss out on stuff that ends up being really fun. Like, oh, I'm like you, Dave. I'm tall. I'm 6'7", so I want to have a king bed. So I put king bed, and that cuts it way down. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. And then some people don't list that as an amenity when they're filling out and doing the thing. So we take out a lot of the filters and spend time actually looking at each listing, and sometimes we find better places that way.
Gotcha. Any negotiations? Do you ever send a message and an inquiry and just say, "Hey, I know your listing is at 2,000, but would you guys be willing to do 1,850?" Has that worked out?
We've done it a couple times, and once it worked, a couple times it didn't. We're not really pushing too hard on that. Typically, it's we're going to be there like the Myrtle Beach place. We were able to get that for $1,500 a month because we were there during the off season and because we were willing to commit to being there for more than 90 days. Then it was a lot cheaper for the person there. They didn't have as much maintenance to deal with. They didn't have to constantly be turning around and cleaning between people. So they cut us a little bit of a break. But for the most part, I think the people that we've been dealing with have priced it for what they're willing to do, and it's something that we're willing to pay.
Yeah, I think you made a really good point. It's easy for me to get into the real estate world, being married to an agent. We've seen real estate work really well for us, but really stepping back and being honest, we don't plan on ever, being renters. I don't see us doing that. I could see us buying places, depending on where our kids live, like whether it be a condo or a small little place or whatever. I just can't see us doing that. But when you really look at the numbers, heck, our electric bill, because our house was built in the 70s, and we have a heated swimming pool, and we have a hot tub, and we have an ADU for that garage that people stay in. Our electric bill is easily $500 a month. Then you look at internet, you look at water. Now you're probably pushing 750 a month right there just for utilities. And then taxes, gosh, they've gone up 60% or so since COVID. So even when our house is paid off, which it's not because we have around a 3% interest rate, we're not paying really extra on it very much. We're just rounding
No,
up.
hang on to that as long as you can.
Yeah, you're looking at, our tax bill would probably still be 500 a month. So even when our house is paid off, to your point, we'll probably still end up having $1,000 to $1,200 a month in taxes, insurance, and utilities. And heck, if you could go live somewhere else and you could, pay 1750 a month to live somewhere and you have no maintenance to worry about and you
Or
have no
utilities.
utilities, everything's covered for you. It's really not that bad of a deal. I guess the biggest issue that I was going to ask next is what do you do with all your stuff? I mean, I'm looking at you in the video that nobody else will see, and you've got a beautiful book collection back there. What are you going to do with all your stuff when you sell your paid for house and then go on the nomad spree?
So just going back to your numbers for a second, I think you're understating it because what you're forgetting is that the sword of Damocles hanging over your head that is repairs. You're
Yeah.
not budgeting for that necessarily every month. Hopefully you have a sinking fund set up, but if your AC unit goes out or if you need a new roof or new appliances, and those are not things you have to worry about. There's some cost certainty that comes with renting that is not there when you own something. What was your second question? This is not real. This is just a background that I have. So wherever I
Look
am
at
around the
that. I got
country,
tricked by AI again.
I know it's just a green screen. So we've been trying to downsize as much as possible over the past couple of years in preparation for selling the house. When we started this process, what we found, I've been traveling a lot for work for the consulting that I do for years, so it's easier for me, and I don't have the same emotional attachments to some things that my wife does. But when we travel, we have a RAV4. We drive out to the places. We stay there for 6 months, and we're living out of whatever we could fit in that RAV4. And what we found is that there are things that we take that we never use. So then on the next trip, our load gets even lighter. And I think if you are honest with yourself, you'll think about the things you actually use in your home probably the same things over and over again. You're pulling the same 3 or 4 shirts off the top of the stack, washing those, putting them back on top of the stack, and not really getting down to your full wardrobe. How many of the books that are on your shelf do you actually read? Are there rooms in your house that you never even go into? That's what we find, is that we don't use a lot of the space or the things that we actually own. We've just accumulated them over years and years and years. So how to get rid of them is really one of our next big challenges.
I was going to say, okay, let's say that it's 2 or 3 years down the road, you've done your SLOMAD traveling and you guys find, the place that you think you can maybe spend at least the next decade or so in. You've got a house that's paid for. You've got all the stuff in the house. You've got beds, you've got end tables, you've got, you know, all kinds of furniture and everything. Will you just, hey, we're going to go Facebook Live here. Come walk through the house, and we've got everything with the price tag. Hey, 300 for the couch. Go ahead and walk it right out. What do we do on the exit strategy here with all the stuff?
No, the reality is that nobody really wants our stuff. We love our stuff. We have our things, but it's just not as valuable to the next generation. This is something that a lot of our parents' generation are dealing with now. Is they've got all these things that they want to pass down, and it doesn't fit our lifestyle. It doesn't fit our motifs. It doesn't fit. We've got 2 boys that are going to be setting up their own households, and they'll take some stuff, and we'll try to get them to take as much as they want, and that'll be their starter furniture and their starter stuff. But they're going to want their own things, and the things that we have won't necessarily be to their style or their liking. Um, it's almost like we need a new growth industry in the country of estate sales for people who are still alive. You move away from a house, leave all your stuff, and just have someone else come in without the emotional attachments and have them sell everything or dispose of it, so you don't have to deal with it or go through the decision fatigue of what do I want to keep or not.
Yeah, that reminds me, everything you're talking about reminds me of the decision that Steph and I made when we went from the 3,600 square feet to the 950 square foot duplex that we paid cash for with the equity from the bigger home. We had watched the documentary on Netflix, The Minimalism, and they had a heat map in there. I've mentioned it a few times on the show, and they took some studies of different families living in the average, 2,400 square foot house that we have in America. And most Americans are only using 40 to 60% of the space in their house. They tracked where you went over the course of a month or so. And we have all this extra space. We've got a formal dining room that we never use. We have china, we have a study, we've got, a separate formal living room just to look nice, that people don't even want you to sit there because you're going to mess up the lines in the carpet that were vacuumed. It can be ridiculous how we are, and I do agree with you that I think this newer generation, this younger generation, they're not nearly as attached to all that space. You'll find out really quick when you go from 3,600 square feet to 950 square feet. You really don't need that much. Heck, Steph's mom ended up following in our footsteps. She thought we were crazy. And then the house she grew up in was like a 4,000 square foot house on the water that her mom had lived in for 25 years. They saw how happy were, and they bought the one right next to us. But it was the same thing. It was such a struggle to get rid of all that stuff and to even find anybody that wanted it. Nobody viewed it nearly as valuable as they did, but they had no room for it and they didn't need it.
We've got a couple strategies that I keep pitching, and my wife is coming around to them, slowly. One is the just the thought process. If your house burned down, would you buy a replacement for this item? And if the answer is no, then you get rid of it. And that has helped us clear out some stuff in some rooms. The problem is we don't really have the impetus. I've got like a closet filled with my principal clothes and my professor clothes that I'm probably never going to wear again. But I've got a closet, so there's no reason to empty it right now. So it just sits there. The other strategy that I like, that I'm talking my wife into and wearing her down slowly over time, is that we give everybody a bin of a certain size, or a corner in a storage unit or something, and say you can fill this with whatever you want, and then you protect that stuff. And then once you've done that, you've protected the things that are most important to you. Then we would swap rooms. So like she would come in and clean out the rest of my office, and I would go in and clean out the rest of her closet. And the boys would switch, and one would clean out one's room, the other would clean out the other's room. So you would have people without the emotional attachment being the ones that would be culling through the remainder of the stuff to see what's valuable and worth recycling and what just needs to be thrown away.
Wow, those are good strategies for sure. I like the idea about, if our house burnt down, we lost everything, what would we rebuy? Maybe 20% of what we had before. Of course, we all want to hang on to those pictures and valuables and things like that. But the other stuff, I agree. That's a really good way to look at it. So you're going to sell your house at some point. Do you have an idea of the value of how much you're going to bring in for that? And will that go into more of a conservative fund, like a high yield savings account that you can draw down on a little bit? Or will that go into maybe a taxable brokerage account?
Yeah, we don't include the value of the house in our net worth calculations because in my mind it's more of a deficit than an asset because of the deferred maintenance. And our house is also it was built in a little bit older than yours, 60, 67, 68, something like that. So there are things that have to be done with it. Still, the North Texas market is exploding, so we would probably make a significant appreciation on it, and it looks good until you realize that we've owned it for 20 years. And if we had invested that money in the market, then it would have done way better than the appreciation on the house. So whatever we get back, we'll probably just plow into our index fund investments and just become a part of our nest egg and allow us to, when we're on Furnished Finder looking for places, look for places that cost 2,500 instead of 1,500, and maybe intentionally inflate our standard of living at that point. Uh, but that's a probably 6 months to a year away.
So we're going to New Mexico. We've been to the Midwest. We've been to the East Coast here. You go into the high desert. Do you have a timeline of, hey, we'd really like to have this spot that we could see ourselves living in retirement by 2030 or 2028? Or is it just more organic? Hey, when we find it, we find it. There's no pressure, no black and white.
It's a metaphor, but in this case, the journey really is the destination. We're just enjoying trying out the different places. I guess in my mind, I'm thinking, maybe we'll do this for 3 to 6 months. I'm 53. My wife is about that age. I can't see us doing this at 70. But where do we get tired of this? I don't know. We'll see.
So ultimately, could you see yourself, like, let's just fast forward and you guys have found the location, the cost of living, airport, hospital, all the different things you want to do, culture, university, all the things on your checklist, you find it. Do you consider buying again? Or if you really think this is going to be the spot that you guys kind of spend the rest of your life in, or do you continue to be a renter?
I mean, right now I'm leaning towards continuing to be a renter, but I'm not ruling anything out. Economic, factors can change, and at some point it might make more sense to be an owner. But at this point, renting and having that flexibility makes a lot more sense to us than being tied down to a location, having the responsibilities, the potential expenses, etc.
All right. So you talked about, okay, we drove cars for a while. We never upgraded houses. That gave us the opportunity to do a lot of traveling with the boys, but we did a lot of domestic travel. We did travel that we could throw everybody in the vehicle and we could drive within a, X amount of hour radius and loop around and still get really good memories together as a family. Can you see yourself, besides the nomadic domestic travel, doing any international traveling with your wife? Is that something that you guys have on your bucket list at all?
Absolutely. Right now, I'm still doing some consulting, and we're staying, close to home for my son's first year of college. But he's actually going to be out of college next year. He had a lot of AP and dual credit stuff, so he'll graduate really early and move on. But as soon as I stop working and don't need to have easy access to airports, then we'll probably go international and do the SLOMAD journey in other countries as well. Same basic path. We'll find a place, use that as a home base, explore around there. We'll probably stay in this hemisphere largely. My wife is a fluent Spanish speaker, and I can get by living in Texas, so that's an advantage I think that leads us to Mexico and Costa Rica and places like that, as opposed to Thailand and where a lot of the financially independent people go to live their nomadic lives. But we'll just kind of have to see how it goes.
Yeah, I was curious if the door was open at all for the nomadic stuff to end up maybe living internationally, whether it be Costa Rica or something like that, or is it just the States?
States for right now, but we definitely have international locations on our list as soon as I wind down the rest of my working.
Gotcha. Okay. And that leads into one of the last questions here. When do you plan on winding down? Do you love what you do? Is the money still really good? And it's like, man, I just can't walk away from this. Are you still wanting to invest? Why are you still doing the consulting?
So one of the ways that we reached financial independence so early is that we just did a lot of different things. We taught, but we also had a bunch of side hustles and side gigs. And over time, we just kind of started pairing off the things that we didn't enjoy anymore, or the things that we thought we weren't getting a return on investment of. I liked being an adjunct professor, but adjunct professors are like wage slaves. There's really no pay for the work involved. So I'm gonna stop doing that. We cut the W-2 jobs. I still enjoy the consulting. I still think that the work that I do through the various companies I work with is making a real impact on the schools that we work with. So I will keep doing that as long as I keep getting contracts that make sense for me and for the schools that are involved. It's not it's not enough to make you rich, but it still allows me to feel like I'm positively impacting kids and teachers. So that's been a big part of my life for a long time, and I like doing it.
Eric, this has been a lot of fun. We definitely need to make sure that we don't go 230 episodes or so in between episodes the next time, because I do want to get an update on where you go next and what you think and how things are moving, maybe next season if you're down for coming back.
Yeah, I'm happy to come back anytime. It's been a fun journey. We've started documenting a lot of what we do because every time we have a conversation, people are like, "Oh my gosh, I've never really thought about that," or not every time, but it happens a lot, and they have questions. So we've started, blogging and doing the social media trail and putting stuff out there. But happy to visit and talk anytime you have questions.
And for any of our listeners here that want to follow your journey, where can they follow you guys?
So I've been blogging at Early Exit Open Road, and that's the branding that we're using on everything. It's kind of been my wife's has taken that on. I write up the stuff, and then she's become the social media maven that posts it: Instagram, Facebook, Early Exit Open Road.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I don't know if in our 275 prior episodes we've had one like this, because again, like you said, it's very interesting, it's very appealing, and it's exciting to think about this slowmatic journey because I feel the same way whenever we're traveling. We're so busy with kids and sports and getting back to work and deadlines that you can't really enjoy it. I find myself sometimes if we're traveling for 5 to 7 days, 2 days ahead of time, I'm starting to pack up, trying to get things ready to go because we got to stay on this schedule. And now you're missing a couple of days of actually really enjoying it. And again, we generally hit the touristy areas. I want to get a feel of the town, of what the people who live there, what they're doing on the day to day, not just the tourist areas. So I love what you're doing, man. I'm going to be following your journey and I might try to convince my wife to do some of the same.
Well, it's not for everyone. We have friends that are perfectly happy. They have a home they love. They nest in it. They're going to have to pry their bodies out of it, when they die, hopefully decades from now. But if you enjoy travel and you like seeing different places and meeting different people, then this, I think, is a way to do it that wouldn't have been possible even 10 years ago. The rise in platforms like Airbnb and Furnished Finder and the availability of access to information about the way to live in various places, it just gives you so many more options than you used to have.
This one is stopping and making me think, Eric. So thank you so much. I appreciate you. Be safe as you guys head to New Mexico. And thank you to all the fit listeners for joining us on this week's version of the Fit Educator podcast. We hope you join us for next week. And as always, be frugal, be fearless, and be a lifelong learner. Take care, everybody.